Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings. Week 14 Waiver Wire Pickup Power Rankings. NFL Injury Report. We're going to take a look back at the best plays, lineup from DraftKings, some game notes, and of course, the viewer questions, the AMA. If you want to ask me anything, email me at thepatmayoexperience@gmail.com. And I don't really care about your start-sit questions in that email account. You can always tweet me at the PME, and that's where I do my question and answer period for pickups or trades. I guess there's no more trades, but start sits, that kind of thing. General stuff on the AMA is what I'm looking forward to. Shout out to everyone out there that played in the swing season, one and done for the golf season, but the giant race for the Mayo Cup is now available at fantasygolfchampionships.com. Registration is open. It is going to fill very quickly. It's 5 max entry. It's $125 per spot, but there's $500,000 guaranteed in the prize pool. So you make one pick per week in golf, can't use the same player twice. Super easy concept, super fun to do. I want to get everyone out in front of that right now. So fantasygolfchampionships.com to go reserve your spot right now. Additionally, if you want to play in the DraftKings Listeners League league, the link is in the description right now for Week 14. Only 2,500 spots, 3 max entry, $15 to play. Go reserve your spot right now down in the description. Smash the like for the episode, sub to Mayo Media Network. We got a ton of stuff coming for you over the holiday season. Probably have our annual Christmas Day Cuss Corner. But with the football season being 18 weeks now, we're going to have full Week 17 coverage like we normally do not. Because that's usually just, a week to take off, hang with the families. No, not this year. We got real content to do. That's Fantasy Championship Week. There's real stuff going on. So Mayo Media Network will have you covered for all of that, especially here on the Pat Mayo Experience podcast. Let's talk about running backs for the week. And the big debate last week was, now that Christian McCaffrey has been placed on injured reserve, what do we do at the running back position? Well, it came down to a discussion between Amir Abdullah and Chuba Hubbard. I still think that Amir Abdullah is the better play on your fantasy, just because of the PPR points that he can pile up. And even half-point PPR, even in standard leagues. Hubbard is probably very close in standard leagues, because I do expect Chuba Hubbard to do the majority of the work on the ground. Now, it's not going to be like, hey, for every 20 carries that Chuba Hubbard gets, Amir Abdullah gets 1. It's not going to work that way. Plus, if Cam Newton continues to remain the starter for the Panthers, which it does look like, at least until Sam Darnold can come back, and even if he is eligible to come back, they just fired Joe Brady, so who knows what's going on in that offense. The issue with the running back who is controlling most of the groundwork is Cam Newton's going to steal your touchdowns. Straight up. Same situation we're going to see happening if Taysom Hill continues to start for the Saints. When you have guys that call their own number near the goal line, it significantly impacts the overall fantasy ceiling of any of these running backs. So right now in the waiver wire pickup rankings, I have Amir Abdullah at number 1 and Chuba Hubbard at number 2. I think they're both like running back 3s. I think I would go with the upside of Amir Abdullah because he can play that Christian McCaffrey check down game, which we saw because, listen, the Panthers aren't very good. They tend to be trailing most of the time. They have some tough games coming up where they're likely to be underdogs. Hence, if you play out those game scripts, it's going to be passing most of the time. So you can see a higher snap percentage for Amir Abdullah anyway. Plus, you get those more valuable receptions over the rushing yards. Now, I'd say that the most valuable thing that you could have are these goal line touches. And that's not to say that Chuba Hubbard is going to be devoid of goal line touches, but his are going to be significantly lower as a percentage because of Cam Newton, who is going to call his own number. And frankly, he's just going to be more effective at the goal line, as we've seen throughout the years. So that's why it's Amir Abdullah over Chuba Hubbard in this circumstance. They're 1 and 2 in the pickup power rankings right now. And after that, it's, just a bunch of retreads, really, because everyone else, like Madison got picked up, Sony Michel was picked up. And I mean, you play them, they're fine. But once the starters come back for their teams, it's going to be a whole lot of nothing from those guys once again. But they are very valuable stashes, as we've seen on your bench. Now, Madison looks like he's going to get some extra runway here because we don't have any sort of timetable for the return of Dalvin Cook. In terms of Sony Michel, Darrell Henderson was active in that game. I mean, active is a very loose term. He was in uniform on the sidelines. He was not active whatsoever in the participation of the game. Hence why Sony Michel had 24 carries and over 100 yards. When Henderson is fine from the squad injury, it's going to be Darrell Henderson's backfield. We saw the circumstance play itself out earlier in the year. It looked like, Sony Michel is going to carve himself out a role. Now, The Rams just really want to use one guy, and when Henderson is healthy, Henderson is the guy. But Sony Michel remains one of the higher-end handcuffs you can have, so you're not going to drop Sony Michel because you saw the sort of impact he can make on your fantasy roster. With only 4 weeks left to go in regular season-long leagues, I mean, that's very valuable. Even if you can get one more game out of him, you're going to want to use him in those circumstances. So Abdullah, Hubbard, Boston Scott is number 3. He was another one like Darrell Henderson, active for the Eagles-Jets game. Didn't play in the Eagles and Jets game. That was with no Jordan Howard either. However, towards the end of the game, Miles Sanders dinged up his ankle. So now they go on to bye week. So it's tough with Boston Scott because if Sanders was out, I would really like Boston Scott, although somehow Kenneth Gainwell would somehow get a ton of run here. But Jordan Howard might be back coming out of this bye week. We might see Miles Sanders be fine coming out of this bye week. So realistically, if you didn't have Boston Scott before, you're not racing out to go get him right now because obviously they're on bye, and by the time they come back and play, they might have 5 running backs healthy in the backfield. Knowing the Eagles, they'll use them all. And if Jalen Hurts is healthy by that point too, he's going to eat in to the overall rushing totals as well. So it's not that strong of a pickup. Maybe if you have the bench room, you do it now, and then coming out of the bye week, it's like, oh yeah, everyone is still out, then fine. Boston Scott is going to be fine. He missed it because of an illness, not a hamstring injury or an ankle injury. He will be fine in 2 weeks. We don't know with the others, but based on timetables, based on their injuries, they probably will be fine in those circumstances. And they don't get to play the Jets every week either, so don't forget that. Tevin Coleman at number 4. If you're running out Tevin Coleman, are you really alive in the playoff hunt? Who knows? Dontrell Hilliard at number 5. If I knew that Jeremy McNichols was still going to miss time with his concussion coming out of this bye week, he would be much higher on this list. I mean, much higher. He'd probably be like number 2, maybe even number 1. He looked great against the Patriots. He played more than Donta Foreman. He's their pass catching back, and A.J. Brown is still going to be out of the lineup. So in games where they are trailing, you're going to see, I mean, they're probably not going to happen with Jacksonville this week, although Jacksonville can play some teams tough, and the Titans have not really looked like world beaters since all of their guys ended up getting hurt. Hilliard's a fine pickup. You probably already have him in competitive leagues, but maybe he was dropped on the bye week. But if McNichols is active, then it becomes more of a dicey situation. I'll talk that through more with Seeley on Tuesday's show of what we think about the injury report and how that affects both Hilliard and Donta Foreman. So Abdullah, Hubbard, Scott, Coleman, Hilliard. Then we get into the high-end handcuffs. Samaje Perine almost got a full... Listen, Chris Evans missed the game. It looked like Mixon was going down with a collarbone injury. Thankfully, he was fine. But Perine would be first up, and it would be a full-time role for him in the Bengals backfield. Khalil Herbert in the Bears backfield. Although David Montgomery, shaping up to be this year's David Montgomery once again. Very easy schedule for the Bears coming down the stretch. And the way that we saw him utilized yesterday against the Cardinals was exactly what you want to see from David Montgomery. They threw the ball a ton. They kept throwing it to David Montgomery. Almost every single time that they ran it with David Montgomery. Goal line, David Montgomery. For whatever reason, he got pegged with this stigma of being awful and like lead-footed out of the backfield, and maybe just the Bears weren't good at running the ball. And then because he had this easy schedule down the stretch a year ago, it's him beating up on easy teams. Well, if we just kind of take a look at it, he has 3 divisional games left, which means Vikings, Lions, and Packers. Pretty good matchups, to tell you the truth. I mean, it's games where they're going to be running the ball. And then in the auxiliary matchup, he has the Giants and the Seahawks left for the rest of the season. Like, those are really good matchups. So he's probably like a fringe RB1 the rest of the way if you're like projecting forward with David Montgomery, but that's also a reason to own Khalil Herbert as well, because we saw if Montgomery goes down, and Herbert's going to play like 95% of the snaps, and that just kind of copy and paste himself onto that role. Although the receptions are way up because Andy Dalton is playing quarterback. Once Justin Fields is fine, no idea when that's going to be. It could be this week, it could be not for the rest of the season. That probably hurts his overall receiving volume, but it does open up more running lanes when you have a rushing quarterback and pulling extra defenders out of the box. So I think it's a bit of a wash in that circumstances if we're just kind of projecting forward in that circumstance. Jermichael Hasty returned for the 49ers, leaped Jeff Wilson on the depth chart. You can find the full running back snap shares down in the description as well. They're in the Mayo Media newsletter, along with the updated injury report if that's what you're looking for. Hasty is just, I believe he is the handcuff to Elijah Mitchell, who's getting all the run in the Niners backfield, but it does strike me as that when we've seen them all healthy all year long, it's Mitchell, Hasty, then Wilson. Trey Sermon's been placed on IR, so we don't have to worry about him for the time being. Devontae Booker backing up the awful Saquon Barkley. I mean, poor guy. That Giants offense is just so out of sorts that they're hard to start at this point. Donta Foreman, we'll see what Matt Breida does on Monday Night Football, but it seems like he's now more trending towards being lead back in Buffalo is really a strong statement because no one really since in the Josh Allen era has been a quote unquote lead back. Best you're seeing is like 55% of the snaps, but that doesn't account for Josh Allen running the ball and a lot like Cam Newton and all of these other rushing quarterbacks calling his own number near the goal line, although he's been running less and doing that less so far this season. But now that we're getting to winning time with the Bills needing to both secure a playoff spot, a division title, and potentially the 1 seed in the AFC, I think you're going to see Josh Allen rush a little bit more, especially if teams continue to play these 2 deep safeties and leave these running lanes available for him. I get why he's not running. It's all about preserving yourself for when the games matter the most. But, you know, another loss in that cloudy AFC, all of a sudden the Bills could be on the outside looking in. So they need to continue to win, and their best asset is Josh Allen. And the moment that he starts running 12 times a game again and going off like 7 yards per carry and breaking these big ones, those defenders and safeties have to come back up on the box, and then it opens up the deep pass once again. So we'll see how the Bills actually do this. But it does appear to me like Matt Breida is the best pass catcher out of the Bills backfield because Zach Moss is in the doghouse. Singletary, we've seen enough of Singletary. He's very bleh. He's going to get his 10 touches per game. What he does with them, complete mystery week to week. But it does appear like Matt Breida is now a part of this passing game where he's going to see his like 3 to 6 targets per game, primarily on like wheel routes. The Bills do very few like dump offs to their running backs, but he's running real routes out of the backfield. So Matt Breida coming in. Then you have Jared Patterson and JD McKissic. McKissic could be back next week off the concussion. Just keep a monitor on him. We'll see. It's just like Jalen Rocket Richard is on the COVID list for the Raiders. Kenyon Drake is out for the season with a broken ankle, so maybe he can continue to see some passing game work a la JD McKissic. I much prefer McKissic, and I'd have him higher on this list if we knew that he was for sure going to be playing, but I have no concussions are like snowflakes. Each one of them is completely different. So hopefully he's okay to come back. If that's the case, I'd vault him up probably to like number 3 on this list because he's actually somewhat usable in half point and full point PPR in deeper leagues if you need the help. Like if McNichols was back, I would take McKissic if he was playing over Hilliard and McNichols. That would be the circumstance that we'd get ourselves into. In full injury report at the running back position, new injury sustained. Elijah Mitchell hurt his head. He exited the game. It looks like he is going to be fine. If not, Hasty would be the primo pickup in that circumstance. We also have Ronald Jones left for the Bucs with an illness. He's going to be fine moving forward. Brendan Bolden is likely to play on Monday Night Football. Miles Sanders exited the game with an ankle injury that he carried an ankle injury designation coming into the week. So that's not good news. No word yet if it's low ankle, high ankle, twisted ankle, whatever it is, because they're going on bye week. We'll have more information on that coming out of the bye. But like I said, Boston Scott would be the pickup of Jordan Howard, could be back in that circumstance as well. And that rushing game is a little bit better, at least in my mind, when Jalen Hurts is playing quarterback, a lot like Justin Fields, when you're pulling guys out of the box, just creating bigger running lanes, and the RPO can really help running backs in that regard. Kenyon Drake is out for the season. Jalen Richard, you probably don't want him. Hopefully, if you're a Josh Jacobs owner, he continues to see this receiving volume that he's been picking up over the past 4 weeks. It's kind of incredible to see Josh Jacobs used in this role after years of us just throw him the ball 5 times a game. Now he's seeing way more than that. It's a lot like Antonio Gibson in Washington now. If this is the role that these guys have cemented for themselves, they are high-end fantasy assets for the rest of the season and moving forward as long as they're used in that role. DeAndre Swift missed week 13 with a shoulder injury that was sustained on Thanksgiving. We'll see whether or not he's good to go in week 14. No word on that yet. Jordan Howard missed week 13. He's on bye. McKissic, obviously with a concussion, missed week 13. No word on him yet. Phillip Lindsay missed for the Dolphins. They go on bye week. David Johnson had an illness and a thigh injury. He did not play. Sex Rex Burkhead got the majority of the touches, but who cares? The Texans are god-awful at this point. They're not even starting Tyrod anymore. Davis Mills is starting for the Texans going into the week. Michael Carter could return this week, although he is doubtful for week 14 for the New York Jets. We'll keep an eye on his status, but he may have been dropped in your league. He should be good to go by week 15 for the fantasy playoffs. The issue with Michael Carter now becomes, since Zach Wilson has reassumed his position, Zoomer Zach, for the New York Jumbo Jets, he doesn't really throw to running backs anymore. That was such a key part of Michael Carter and Ty Johnson and Tevin Coleman's value when it was Joe Flacco, when it was Mike White, when it was Josh Johnson. They were targeting the running backs like 30% of the time. So you just build up the floor and get these guys into space. Everything was working really, really well. Zach Wilson just wants to chuck the ball as hard as he can everywhere on the field. It's just not leading to a very high completion percentage, and especially to those running backs. It's not like the Jets are very effective at running the ball anyway, especially when you're losing by 10 points for most of every single game. You're just not going to be able to establish yourself. So it's going to be hard to trust him whenever he returns because we don't know how this offense is going to operate with both Michael Carter and Zach Wilson. I would guess if healthy, Michael Carter is the one who sees the majority of touches in the Jets backfield, probably like 60-65% of the snaps. Unfortunately, what does that really lead to? Are we into a Rex Burkhead situation where, yeah, he's out there a ton? Who cares? Because he touches the ball for 3 yards per clip and is not put in the proper situations in order to have an impact on fantasy. And then if they get near the goal line, are they going to turn to Tevin Coleman? Are they going to turn to Ty Johnson? Who knows? Who was the jabroni from last or 2 weeks ago? I completely forget what his name was now. He touched the ball once against the Eagles. I just don't know what the Jets are up to. The offense is not good enough to sustain 4 running backs. And even if you have the lead option coming back in a mystery, not the greatest situation in the world. Worth a pickup, because if you can make it through week 15, or if he comes back in week 14, you can then try to see what the Jets are doing with him and how they're utilizing him on the offensive side of the ball to deem whether or not he's going to be worthy to crack your playoff roster. But you can't have too many assets at this point. Like, if you have Cortland Sutton, cut Cortland Sutton. He's like useless at this point. Ever since Jerry Jeudy came back, like, he sucks. So I'd rather have Michael Carter on my bench to see what's going on with him. Jeremy McNichols coming off the bye with his concussion. He's questionable for week 14. Alvin Kamara, who knows what's going on with him. And again, he's into a situation now where Ingram's playing a little bit more. Taysom Hill is rushing for over 100 yards and rushing the ball over 10 times per game, probably calling his own number at the goal line. And even when we saw the checkdowns, although the finger is banged up, apparently Taysom Hill is going to play through it. He's not really one to dump off to his running backs, which is so much a part of Alvin Kamara's fantasy value that he'd be very hard to trust going into the fantasy playoffs unless we saw for certain how his role is going to be with Taysom Hill, or even if Simeon came back and played quarterback. I'd feel better about at least the floor of Alvin Kamara. I think that his upside is probably higher with Taysom Hill, but then you have to dodge Taysom Hill rushing touchdowns near the goal line. So maybe Simeon is just the way that you want to roll with him. Chase Edmonds is still on injured reserve. James Conner playing a ton of snaps. When you go and look at the snap chart for the week, again, available in the description, which is, the link is down in the description. It's available in the newsletter. James Conner played the 3rd highest percentage of snaps of any running back in football. He just continues to score touchdowns at a very high clip. He was held under 4 yards per carry for the 3rd straight game, but he did score for the 6th straight game and caught multiple passes in his 4th straight game, which is tremendous news just in terms of stability. James Conner's not going to be a top 5 fantasy running back. Maybe if he scores 3 touchdowns, he has that week where he vaults himself up into that upper echelon. But if we're looking like as a median outcome basis, he's going to be like running back number 7 to 15 every single week, which makes him an insta start no matter what you're doing. And he continues to have his DraftKings pricing way down, which is fantastic news for everyone moving forward. Wide receivers, there's not a ton going on the waiver wire right now. Kendrick Bourne is still widely available. We'll see what he does Monday night. He's number 1. KJ Osborne, I do think, is the best pickup of the bunch, and we'll get to Ty Conklin in a minute. But when we're talking about this Minnesota offense, doesn't matter who they play, good team, bad team, they're going to score points and make it close. They play Thursday night against the Pittsburgh Steelers. KJ Osborne has scored in 3 of his last 4 games in which he has seen 5 or more targets. Adam Thielen is banged up. It looks like he's going to be out for multiple weeks right now, and there's potentially high-scoring games for him coming up. You got the Rams in Week 16, the Packers in Week 17. That in deeper leagues as a wide receiver 3 or flex play, it feels like you can do a whole lot worse than KJ Osborne at this point. Like, the Vikings offense is so concentrated. Now we're taking away key pieces. We've taken away Dalvin Cook. We don't know when he's coming back. We've taken away Adam Thielen. We don't know if he's coming back this year. So it's Justin Jefferson, Alexander Madison, and then you have sort of in that third role, you have KJ Osborne and Tyler Conklin. And they pass the ball enough that I think that they're both viable options. Like they probably see like 6+ targets each per game, unless they're winning by like 3,000 points, which the Vikings never do. They were 7-point favorites against the Lions this week. They lost outright, but they had only covered that number once all season. So they're just instinctively playing close games to begin with, thus fostering a decent amount of rushing attempts, but a lot of passing attempts as well. And of course, it wasn't Kirk Cousins' fault that the defense gave up the play that lost the game, gave up a 75-yard drive to the Lions. But the week that Tim really goes all in on Kirk Cousins, saying he's way better than Aaron Rodgers, of course the Vikings lose to the Lions, because that's how the Ander curse works. But KJ Osborne, I have him number 2 in my pickup rankings at wide receiver. After that, Devontae Parker returned for the Dolphins. Looked pretty good. Doesn't seem like we're going to be seeing Will Fuller anytime. Apparently his finger is like shattered or something like that. Not great for a receiver. And Lord knows it wasn't from Tua's like fastball coming at him. It's not like he's catching Justin Herbert passes or Zach Wilson passes. Tua, it's got some precision. He's got some float on the ball to make it easy for his guys to catch. Although I do think that the return of Devontae Parker, just overall from a real life football perspective for the Dolphins, is going to turn out really well, only because Waddle's utilized over the middle, as is Gesicki for the most part. They have these giant guys. I mean, Matt Collins is a receiver. He's really a tight end. Then they have like 3, like, they're not brand name. They're like the generic version of white guy tight ends, and like they're all interchangeable. Durham Smythe, Adam Shaheen has missed some time. They have some other jabroni out there too. Just like whenever one of them catches the ball, it's like, oh good, Mike Gesicki touched. Oh no, that's not Mike Gesicki. That's random other giant white guy on the Dolphins. With Devontae Parker, he does give them the element. We saw it a lot against the Giants. 3rd down conversion rate, down the sidelines, big body, making contested athletic catches. For as long as he can stay healthy, he is such a boon to this Dolphins offense. If they only had a better version of Myles Gaskin, their offense would be clicking really well right now. And against the Giants, they didn't have to do that much. And the Giants defense hasn't been abysmal by any means. And Tua now has that threat on the outside, which should open up Waddle even more, that they have someone that can go make these contested sideline catches to really extend drives, extend the offense, and give some more confidence to Tua throwing outside of the hash marks, which is not something he does a ton. It's a lot of slants. It's a lot of seam routes. It's a lot of posts, very few corners, very few out routes deeper down the field. So I think that Parker can bring that element and take some of the heat off those 2 guys in the middle. I think it's great news for the Dolphins in real life, especially with their easy schedule. So he's number 3 in the pickups. Josh Reynolds is number 4, continues to do some good work for the Lions, and Lord knows they're going to be trying to throw as much. I mean, they want to run as much as possible, but game script usually dictates throwing more for the Detroit Lions. We didn't see that this week, and we'll see what happens to them in the future. I think they played the Broncos this week. Is it the Broncos? Let's see. Who is playing the Lions this week? The Jags are, it's the Broncos playing Detroit playing in Denver. Denver's actually looked pretty good against Kansas City. It was more of a bend but don't break type of deal. And if they are shutting down or at least limiting the Chiefs' offense, Lord knows what's going to happen with the Lions. But as long as Jared Goff has time to throw, he's just going to dink and dunk his way down the field. So for half point and full point PPR, these Amon-Ra St. Brown and Josh Reynolds are looking pretty good on the Detroit Lions at the moment. And just the other pickups are like Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who has done really well with Allen Lazard both missing time and dropping every pass that comes his way. Randall Cobb is still banged up with his groin injury. We'll see whether or not he plays coming out of the bye week, but MVS has become the secondary option to Devontae Adams in this Packers offense, and he is the deep threat. He's more boom or bust, but the booms are pretty good that, especially if you're an underdog in a contest, he's the type of guy to roll out to get one of those huge games. He's in the Deshaun Jackson, Odell Beckham type of ether right now of, there's significant downside, but the upside all comes on one big play. So MVS at number 5. Russell Gage, he's been good and bad. I mean, he was shut out on Thanksgiving against Dallas, which kind of really skews his stats overall. But when you look at essentially since Calvin Ridley has went out, Russell Gage was shut out week 10 in the 3 games. Was that week 10? Week 10 was really that. In the 3 games since, he has 22 catches on 27 targets. So he is the wide receiver 1 in this offense because all teams are doing is taking away Kyle Pitts and be like, hey, Russell Gage, if you beat us, congratulations. That does not mean Atlanta is winning a game. So they're going to just give that up all day long. Russell Gage comes in at number 6. Then you have Sterling Shepard. Lord knows when he's ever going to come back. Lord knows when Tony's ever going to come back. Do you even want these guys with Jacob Fromm now starting? Probably not. AJ Green, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Traquan Smith. Rashad Perriman at number 11, as he seems to be the one now filling in full-time for Antonio Brown, who is going to be out until at least December 26th with this fake vax issue that he submitted. So he's suspended 3 games. He was dealing with the ankle injury anyway. The earliest he can come back is December 26th. He might not even come back to the league. I don't know. The Buccaneers, listen, they probably don't care. They just want him to come back, but there could be like actual lawsuits that come into this. People have been talking about what's the difference between Aaron Rodgers and Antonio Brown is. Antonio Brown submitted like faulty paperwork to the league and pretended that he had a vaccination when he didn't. All he had to do was say that he didn't have the vax, and then he just would have had to comply with those rules. And there wouldn't be this big of a problem. There'd be no suspension. And that was the difference between Rodgers. Rodgers just lied to a reporter, or didn't even lied, misled a reporter into thinking one certain thing. But the NFL knew what was going on the entire time. His teammates knew what was going on the entire time. And when you have Antonio Brown like trying to sell off fake vaxes, here's the key thing about Antonio Brown, which is really, doesn't seem to be a very good guy, seems to be kind of a moron, but his biggest downfall is I think his chef ratted him out because he didn't pay his chef. I think whatever it was before, he forgot he didn't pay his personal trainer, and then ended up like in murky waters in terms of law. So just pay your fucking employees and you're going to be fine, Antonio Brown. Then people aren't just looking to rat you out the entire time. You think that this would be very easy stuff to come through. Pay your employees. Then, when you pay someone, you're not necessarily buying their loyalty, but they're not going to go out of their way to screw you at the same time either. When all bets are off and then someone owes you a bunch of money, it's just YOLO against you. All the dark secrets are coming out. Not that I'm condoning what Antonio Brown did, but he could have went about this in a certain way to not get caught. Seems pretty stupid to me, to tell you the truth. Mayo Media Network, where we pay our employees so people don't reveal the dirt on old Pat Mayo. Adam Thielen is injured. He's out 2 to 4 weeks with a high ankle sprain. We might not, if the Vikings get themselves out of the playoff hunt, we might not see him again this season. Kenny DeGolladay just joined the list of other injured Giants receivers. He has a ribs injury. He exited the game. We know that Sterling Shepard and Kadarius Toney both didn't play. Daniel Jones is dealing with a neck injury. Mike Glennon is now benched for Jacob Fromm, who did say after being drafted by the Buffalo Bills a year ago that he would be the starter in week 1 over Josh Allen because Josh Allen was trash, and then Josh Allen was second in MVP voting. So, Josh Allen really benefiting from the Ander curse. Jake Fromm, not so much. But he's going to be starting for the Giants, it looks like, this week, which is kind of hilarious. Probably don't want to play any of these guys. Corey Davis exited the game with an ankle injury. He had come into the game with a groin injury. Corey Davis just not holding up whatsoever. The Jets, big free agent signing, not working out. Big shocker. Allen Robinson still has his hamstring injury. I am stunned he is not on injured reserve. As of yet, we saw Jakeem Grant be the one opposite Darnell Mooney do the most damage. Damiere Byrd did get us to that over on his receiving prop right at the end of the game, but he did what I thought he was going to do. He got his 6 targets. He didn't catch a high percentage of the balls, but he did go over 30 yards. I still like Byrd more than I like Grant. Not that these are super playable guys, but if you're looking for low receiving props when it comes down to game time, that's where I was. Fucking Jimmy Graham, man. Jimmy Graham was one of my bigger bets of the week, over 11.5 yards. Obviously, he went under. Big loss on my part. He has 2 catches in the game. Only 1 credited one. He caught a touchdown. He caught a 2-point conversion. So you play Jimmy Graham in fantasy. What do you have? 9.1 points? He had 1 catch for 1 yard officially, yet almost scored 10 points in fantasy. I figured they would use him a little bit more on 3rd down because of the way that they use him at the goal line. So 11.5 yards. He had more than double that in each of the previous 3 games. Nope. Let's throw to Cole Kmet, who's going to bobble the ball up into the air for a pick. I'll tell you what's really infuriating. Having 100% Cardinals defense on DraftKings, picking them up everywhere. They were my number 1 ranked defense for the week. They could have scored 3 defensive touchdowns in this game. Andy Dalton actually made a really nice play to save one of them, but they had 3 returns that looked like they were going to the house and set them all up in inside the 15, inside the 10-yard line. If you're wondering why the Cardinals' offensive stats look so janky if you didn't watch that game, it's because the defense kept setting them up so close to the goal line is that Kyler never needed to pass more than twice on any sort of drive to score a touchdown. I mean, they ended up with 4 picks. They had a good day, but the day could have been amazing. You score one of them, they're the leading defense over the Chargers for the week. They score 2 of them, they absolutely break the slate. Them's the breaks when you're dealing with fantasy defenses. Obviously, there's so much randomness and luck, but they were in the position that we wanted to have. Pressure on the quarterback, forcing turnovers, trying to get scores. There's nothing, you could ask for more, obviously, because they could have done more. And, Andy Dalton slips or he pulls a Teddy Bridgewater and is just you know what? I'm not getting myself hurt. I'm just going to stand here and let you run to the end zone, sir. Would have been a huge day for the Cardinals. So picking on the Bears, at least with Dalton right now in these jankier conditions, whether whether it be cold, whether it be rain, or both, like we saw on Sunday, is a very good situation to be in. Julio Jones has been activated to return from injured reserve. Whether or not he plays in Week 14 is still a mystery. A.J. Brown is still on injured reserve, but Julio could go this week against the Jags. If they think they can beat the Jags, they might hold them another week because, I don't know, that Julio's hamstring is being held together with Scotch tape or something like that. I don't know. So that's just the case. Marquise Goodwin missed the game with a foot injury for the Bears. That's why we saw Jakeem Grant and Damiere Byrd out there. More so, Debo could be back this week for the 49ers, but I'm guessing... Ooh, excuse me, big burps from old Pat Mayo. I'm guessing that we're going to see him miss another week right now. Cedric Wilson missed the Cowboys game. We saw a bit of Noah Brown at the beginning, and then that was the end of him. Calvin Ridley, I don't think he's coming back this season, especially in a lost season for the Falcons to begin with. What is the point of bringing him back right now? Get him right, get your mental health back together properly. It's no different than treating a broken arm. You need to let yourself have time heal. If that means the entire offseason so he can come back ready, get himself into a good place for week 1 next year, I'm sure that's what both the Falcons organization wants. That's what Calvin Ridley wants. That's what Falcon fans want. Anyone who plays fantasy wants to see Calvin Ridley back. That's what they want to see too. A fully healthy, good to go Calvin Ridley going into next season. Tight ends for the week. Injury-wise, we're looking at Logan Thomas. Finally got himself back, caught a touchdown. Now he's out for the season. Ricky Seals-Jones also missed Week 13. He could be back for Week 14, which would be a nice situation for him. We'll see with this hip pointer that he has. He's probably out again. Ryan Griffin exited the game for the Jets after, I actually bet him over 15 and a half receiving yards. He got to 15, then got hurt. That's how poorly my Sunday went in terms of betting. It wasn't great. Just little break here, little break there. You have to eat the losses a lot of the time. And, this was a week where I ate some losses. You have to keep it in perspective. If you have the good weeks, you're going to have the bad weeks that go along with it. This was a bad betting week from me. If I just focused on the early slate of games, I did really well ATS in the early games. It was the late slate of games that absolutely wiped me out. Only got the Rams right, I think, of those. And, 2 of my best bets of the week were from those late games. Stupid 49ers, stupid Ravens. They both should have won the games, and just it was infuriating to watch the entire time. Eric Ebron missed Week 13 as well. Darren Waller also missed the week. The island of Foster Moreau did not work out very well for anyone who streamed him. He had the 1 catch, but I still think that you want to play him going forward, especially with the Raiders needing to throw against the Chiefs. The Chiefs give up the 8th most fantasy points to tight ends, and you have to figure that's probably a game where they're going to be doing a ton of throwing. So as long as Waller is out, Foster Moreau is running a ton of routes. He's out there. Just there was no connection with him against the Washington football team this week. Overall, pickups for tight ends: Tyler Conklin, now number 1, Foster Moreau. Number 2, Cole Kmet, CJ Uzma, Hunter Henry. We'll see what kind of work and route and snap share and target share he gets with Jonnu Smith back and against a pretty good Bills defense. We'll see how they hold up. And then I have John Bates at number 6. Bates, the fill-in for Ricky Seals-Jones and Logan Thomas. He was like 3 for 47 in relief of Logan Thomas in that game. We know that Heineke likes throwing to his tight ends. He's like 0% owned if you desperately need a streamer. He's not like a top 10 play or anything like that, but John Bates can patch together potentially 10 points for you at tight end if that's something that you need. Other than that, Evan Ingram I have at number 8. He's no good, but he might literally be the only guy healthy besides Pharaoh Cooper or John Ross and 2L Colin Johnson on the New York Giants. And we'll see if Jake Fromm can hit him up. Quarterbacks for the streaming purposes. Bad week for streamers. Hopefully you have your quarterback in place. Taysom Hill against the Jets if he is healthy. It's a great spot. Jimmy G at the Bengals. Cam Newton at home against the Falcons. And then Teddy Bridgewater at home against the Lions. Yeah. If Newton plays, it's a nice rebound spot for him, but we don't even know if he's playing. If Darnold's going to be back, what's going on with them at the quarterback position right now? Injury-wise, Davis Mills is going to start for the Texans. Tyrod's dealing with a wrist injury. Taysom Hill is questionable. Jalen Hurts is going on bye week after missing Week 13. We'll see how his ankle holds up over the bye week and get a situation. It does appear like Jalen Hurts is going to be the starter as long as he is healthy for the Eagles. I mean, Gardner Minshew Walk played great against the Jets. I don't know if that tells us anything, but I think this a healthy Jalen Hurts makes this offense more dynamic. And there's a reason that they're in the playoff hunt right now. It's because Jalen Hurts and the defense have been really good. And the rushing game is so much more effective against anyone. Like, to do it against the worst rush defense in the league, the Jets, that's one thing with Gardner Minshew. We have seen the Eagles take on some high-end run defenses and do really, really well when Hurts is playing quarterback. I do not think that would translate as well when you have Gardner Minshew under center. Let's see. Daniel Jones, doubtful. Jake Fromm going to start. Justin Fields, no idea whether or not he is going to play for the Bears moving forward, but he could play in Week 14. That's on the table, at least. Defensive streams for Week 14. Who do I got? There's a lot of streamers this week. The Broncos were dropped en masse because they played the Chiefs. They're at home against the Lions. Probably a defense you want to play. Packers at home against the Bears this week. Continue to stream in the elements against Andy Dalton. Even if it's Justin Fields, I still like the Packers defense in the situation. Vikings on Thursday night, short rest against the Steelers. I mean, the Steelers are going to try to dink and dunk their way down the field. If you can just press them, get up by 10 points against them and make them throw down the field, it leaves Ben susceptible to horrible mistakes. So the Vikings can take advantage of this, although their pressure rate was way down without Evers and Griffin. And that's something to monitor going forward because he was such a big part of that. They can still potentially get to Big Ben with the Steelers' offensive line not playing up to snuff in pass protection whatsoever. Titans at home against Jacksonville. Browns at home against Baltimore with Pick City. Lamar Jackson coming there, 4 picks last time out against the Browns. Well, they still won the game. Doesn't really matter from a DST perspective. Chiefs at home against the Raiders. Saints at the Jets. Panthers at home against the Falcons. And Jags at Tennessee. You could potentially go Falcons at the Panthers too if Cam Newton is starting. Not a great play because where the Falcons don't score a ton of points, that leads the Panthers to, even in a close game, trying to run as much as possible. And the more that they're running, the fewer fantasy points that are going to be produced. Once again, you can find all of this in the newsletter. The cheat sheet for the pickup power rankings, which get updated, are going to be on dknation.com. along with the snap shares and everything like that in the newsletter. But I have listed the look-ahead defenses for the playoffs. No change from last week. The Niners, number 1. Dolphins, number 2. Jags, Titans, Seahawks, and Saints are your top 6 streamable defenses for the fantasy playoffs based on their matchup. The 2 with the best matchups are the Niners and Dolphins. All 3 weeks, very good matchups for the fantasy playoffs. It's time to start planning out the fantasy playoffs in your league if you're going to make it. Even if you're not going to make it, you still want to play and put yourself into a position as if you are going to make it to get yourself ahead of the game, save the fab dollars, and box out the rest of your league. Just like using those running back handcuffs on your bench, box out your opponents so they can't use these guys against you, and you save all your fab money now. So if something big and dramatic does happen, you can outbid everyone else when it comes down to it. As promised, I was actually going to review the best plays lineup from the DraftKings show I did with Raza last week, and it was a good lineup. It's funny to look at the amount of points and like the scores on the team and just kind of see where we were on, because it didn't cash in the Millionaire Maker. That's the one that I throw it into the 3, I throw it into the 20 just to have some fun to see where it does on the cash line. But like 155 points normally is a cashable total. It was not this time around. So I'm playing the Listeners League link. Why do I always say Listeners League link? Play in the Listeners League this week on DraftKings. The link is down in the description. But just a review for everyone. It was Justin Herbert who ended up as the quarterback on that team. I guess we didn't stack anyone with him because, it's the shitter guys know what he's doing. He's just playing the best plays. But Herbert scored 29.28 points. Joe Mixon was the big miss here at quarterback, only because when you look through everything and look at the scores for the week, that there was just better running back plays. Like Jonathan Taylor was highly owned. He ends up absolutely going off in that circumstance. He scores 28 points. David Montgomery, who was a favorite of mine in these lineups, scored 28 points. Sony Michel opened up later in the week after we did the show. He scored 25 points. Josh Jacobs. So all these cheaper running backs ended up doing really well, as opposed to Joe Mixon, who, as I pointed out to Roz when we did the show, was incredibly undercursed. So him only scoring 10.4 points just left you at such a massive disadvantage when you could have paid up a little bit more to get Jonathan Taylor, paid down a little bit more to get Leonard Fournette, or hell, even Austin Eckler. If you paid up a little bit more, you were still getting 9 extra points. So the move was pay for Jonathan Taylor, then hit that mid-tier of the obvious guy. of Antonio Gibson. That really would have worked out well. He was the other running back in this lineup. So it was Mixon and Gibson with 22 points. We also used Elijah Mitchell, who scored 17. Those were all fine numbers, but the proper construction that you wanted to use was probably Taylor at the high end, Sony Michel at the low end, even when the news that Darrell Henderson ended up being active, but he didn't really play, because that would have scored you, those are two of the top 3 running backs of the week. And then David Montgomery in that middle tier with 28 points. But if you didn't do that, it would have been Antonio Gibson. It would have been Josh Jacobs. It would have been Elijah Mitchell. You really could have got away with it. Just Mixon and Najee Harris were kind of the busts of that area. Hell, you could have got away with James Conner at 19 points as well in that mid tier. So, whether it was Gibson, whether it was Montgomery, it just couldn't be Mixon at the very high end was really where that got let down. At receiver, you kind of had to pick your poison and end up being right with everything. The 3 receivers that we went with, and sort of the value guys, ended up playing fine, just not great. Like Justin Jefferson, Deontay Johnson, Chris Godwin, and T. Higgins and Cooper Kupp, where you had to have at least 2 of those 3 to really play high. One of the 3 was a necessary really to get into the cash. We had Renfro, Josh Reynolds, and Jalen Waddle. So 18 points, 22.2, and Reynolds only 10.9. Once again, all of these lower end receivers who get like a little bit of buzz, occasionally they'll work out, but they're better off chalk left to everyone else. You can pick your poison. Like a cheap running back is not the same as a cheap receiver. Like you could have used Amon-Ra St. Brown for around the same price. He scored 24 points. He scored more than double he was more expensive, obviously, than Josh Reynolds. That was kind of the point of using him, but you could have got away with it. It was even like Foster Moreau at $2,900. Like, yeah, very odd, 2,700, 2,600, 29, where the hell he was. You could have got away from him so easily because he was going to be the highest owned tight end on a slate where there was really good tight ends. We used Gronk in this lineup. He scored 21.8. You could have got up to Kittle for a little bit more. Now, it would have been more difficult with the way that we constructed our running back roster because we used Mitchell, Gibson, and then paid up for Mixon. You could have paid up for Taylor, but you would have needed the salary relief of Sony Michel, which opened up after we did the show in order to mix that all in. In defense, we used the Washington football team for this lineup. I tried to go full Cardinals, which really hurt a lot of your leverage because they were $3,400. I just had a lot of faith in them. But I guess the pay down ones that you wanted to use, let's see, the Chargers. Yeah, the Chargers were the best. The Cardinals were second. The Bucks, who were like the super cheap defense. I guess the Steelers against the Ravens, they were still $2,900. There was no like super cheap defense that did really well. It was like the Falcons with 7 points, the Seahawks with 9. Basically, the Chargers and Colts scored 20 and 18 points. And then on the main slate, the Cardinals were third at 11 along with the Bucks, and they were all over $3,000. Like the Chargers were the play at $3,000. I guess you don't know that going in. You kind of had to spin the dice and get lucky, but all the pay down defenses this week were very bad. And I mean, even these higher end ones were really low owned. So 3.7 points, whatever it is, it was very marginal. I guess the point would have been just save as much money as possible at defense and hope you didn't take the Texans and score in the minuses. And then they would allow you enough salary relief to go through everything. So the best plays lineup wasn't all that far off, to tell you the truth. So instead of Herbert, it should have been Brady. Instead of Waddle, it should have been Godwin. Renfro was fine, but he's probably too chalky. We could have went to T. Higgins in that spot, who scored more points. Obviously, Justin Jefferson at the higher end, but a lot of the higher end guys did a lot of really good work this week when it came down to scoring a lot of points. And like we had Gronk in that lineup. If you could get up to Kittle, you could punt away. Listen, not everyone's going to have, fire emojis next to every single player. And Josh Reynolds, 11 points for $3,400. You could have got away. Like that was fine. You could have got away with it if it had the salary relief you needed to get up to the other positions. The big mistake here was Joe Mixon. Like he was just such an anchor into this lineup when there were just so many better options around him. I blame the Ander curse for the entire thing. And just there was a lot of weirdness in that game. Like I really like Jamar Chase as a leverage play this week at receiver against Justin Jefferson. Now, Justin Jefferson almost scored 40 points. It was stupid that I didn't play Justin Jefferson. But Chase drops what probably would have been a 90-yard touchdown. Not only does he drop it, he pops it into the hands of the Chargers, who return it back the other way and set up an easy score for Los Angeles. And then, Chase didn't do much. He had some bad drops in that game as well. So you have to get lucky with this stuff. Although going forward, you got to think the teams take out Justin Jefferson. I don't know if that's possible in these circumstances, but maybe coming off a huge week, it's sort of like the golfer who wins the week before that no one wants to go back to them the next week, and where he's not on the main slate this week. I'm curious to see where that opens up. Thursday night, Justin Jefferson is going to be a ton. KJ Osborne's probably the move on Thursday night, with Adam Thielen being out on the short turnaround against Pittsburgh, who you can throw deep on. They even tried to get Jefferson to throw to KJ Osborne against the Lions. That's how desperate they were to beat the Lions and couldn't even do it. So looking back, it wasn't a bad lineup. Obviously, it didn't cash. I think it would have cashed in cash games, but in GPPs, it did not quite hit the cash line. Frankly, if you play like the best plays lineup in like 50-50s or cash games the entire season, it's actually doing really well because they're the obvious chalk plays. And like a lot of people have the same plays where Joe Mixon in a cash game is far less detrimental than he would be in a GPP because he's so much higher owned in a cash game where people are looking to pivot off of him in those circumstances. All right, let's close this with a question from the viewers out there, the AMA. Once again, the Pat Mayo Experience at gmail.com to hit me up some questions, industry questions, life questions, whatever questions you want, just not start sit questions. Just save those for the Twitter machine. And this one comes from Matt. It says, where do you see the Pat Mayo Experience in a couple years? One thing I enjoy so much about your show is the transparency and the peek behind the curtain that few shows give. Would be very interested to hear your thoughts of where you want to take the show and where you see the future of the show. I honestly don't know. I mean, I've been doing the same sorts of shows now for like 4 or 5 straight years, and I wonder if it gets stale, in complete honesty, to the audience. I mean, I look at the numbers of the show. I would really like to figure out this show in football season for the future. The Monday show, whether it be Sunday night, Monday, I'm trying to figure out the best way to do that moving forward because I feel like this show could be a lot better. And it's tough because, you know, I'm doing a lot of work. I'm not doing the live show on Sundays anymore, but I am working from like 6 a.m. all the way up to kickoff, watching all the games, releasing the newsletter at night, prepping for the waiver wire. It's a really long day, and I just don't feel like I have my best effort. I try to, like, Meanie and I started recording week 1 to week 4 in the evening, right when the Sunday night football game starts. But I am fucking wiped by the time Sunday night football comes along. Like, it's not, listen, watching football is one thing. When you're watching like 7 screens at once, you're trying to process all the information. Obviously, the news isn't great, Sunday evening versus doing this on Monday afternoon. The downloads are a lot better when I do it on Sunday night. The views are a lot higher when I do it Sunday night. And I know what I'm looking for on Sunday night. Like, even if it's during the game, whether I'm going to sleep, whether I wake up early on Monday morning, the whole impetus behind it was, like with a lot of my shows, I want to be out earlier than everyone else. But I just felt like the show wasn't all that good. I mean, I love talking to Meanie. And I feel like just our back and forth is really good, but I'd like to figure out a way to structure it. And I think that's the one thing that I'm going to work on a little bit more. I was actually, if people are still listening to this, I've been talking with Osimo and Big T about potentially collaborating with them as they go head to head on a show with me as a host. I think that would be really cool. I've been very happy with the Friday show with me and Rob and Cam. I think that show has been excellent. I think that people have, like, it's funny that show has vaulted up to number 2 in football season behind the Wednesday Spread Pick show in terms of downloads. Like, I think people look at the video views, like, I mean, I don't know if I've said this before, if people know, like, the audio audience for the Pat Mayo Experience is like 5 to 10 times larger than the video audience, which is really hilarious to think about. But I mean, I watch very few things on YouTube. I listen to most of the things through Apple Podcasts or Spotify. So I think that makes a lot of intuitive sense to me. That's why you hear so many ads in the show to help support the show. Some people complain about too many ads, like just hit the fucking skip 60 button. It's not that big of a deal. And that actually does sustain the Pat Mayo Experience and all of Mayo Media Network, is being able to sell those mid-roll ads. Like, that's a huge part of this show and any podcast, is being able to sell those. Like, if it really does trigger you, stop fucking listening. Like, if you can't press the skip 60 button 3 times in a row, like, I don't know what to tell you. You're a moron, maybe? I don't know. But we can't do the show for free. Like, this is our full-time job. We need to make money somehow, and that's one of the ways to do it. It's just like, when I pump up Prize Picks, or when I pump up DraftKings, or RunTheSims.com, or Fantasy National. Like, these are all ways to help sustain having this show come out as frequently as possible and have it, be to its best quality, that we can pay people. I can pay myself. I can, pay for the equipment, roof over my head, pay employees to do more shows for Mayo Media Network moving forward. So with the Pat Mayo Experience, I don't know if I'm going to keep it the same as it is. I might dial back the production quality of the Pat Mayo experience, fewer graphics, just make it more like it's straight to audio, but we'll film it at the same time. And I might try to rework my efforts into doing not necessarily studio shows, because I'm opening up my new studio in the new year. It's almost done. And the production quality based out of that studio is going to be so much higher than what you're seeing, which is literally a room in my basement right now. I think it's very comfortable down here, but I can't have people in studio. And I don't like working at home. I find it really weird. I don't mind writing at home, but I think that there is something to going to a studio, leaving the house. Like, it really gets you amped up for the day. I just find myself very lethargic at home. It's like, I can go film that in an hour, unless I have like a very scheduled time. I'm going to keep the studio, obviously, in case I need to film stuff from home. So I think the Pat Mayo experience works best when it's a talky format, when it's a back and forth, when it's less serious, when it's jokey, still presenting good information. That's also another problem of trying to be first out. Like, we do it with the spread show, we do it with the ranking show. Like, I think that where our shows are more entertainment and they're lighter and they're jokier, that I still always want to present good information in those shows. And a lot of shows, they'll release their ranking show on Thursday morning. Not to say that those people don't do their own research. It's just the stats. Everything is just so much more widely available by that point. It doesn't take as much time to research. And I do put in a substantial amount of research, shockingly enough, to make sure that I'm prepped for these shows. And I do have a screen in front of me with like jot notes on it and player notes. Like, I try to commit most of this to memory as I go through, so I don't have to break with the camera. So I'm thinking about keeping the Pat Mayo experience more casual, me and Jeff, me and Cuss, me and Cam, me and Rob, but also starting to produce higher end, more produced type shows that are probably shorter. I can probably sell them off. I'm really trying to break back into the TV market. We're currently on TV in Canada for the Pat Mayo experience. Maybe that's what people want to see. Like, we fill up. Like, there's one of two ways this can go. I can keep the shows how they are, maybe do 4 a week instead of 6 a week, so it's not as big of a grind, and it keeps everyone up, and then they don't have to listen to the shows like this one. Like, I can see that this show is by far the least popular of all the shows that I do. That is not lost on me. However, and people still want the waiver wire stuff, and I want to do the waiver wire stuff. And when it gets to week 14 in the season, like, there's so few people who still give a shit about season-long fantasy football, and I see it in the numbers of the ranking show. It's the biggest. The ranking show I do with Jake is the biggest show that I do in week 1, and week 2, and week 3. Up until week 5, and people are like, oh shit, I'm 0-5. I don't care about this anymore. The spread pick show, it goes up in listeners throughout the course of the year. The best bet show has been building an audience. So I'd like to have that sort of vibe, because I think that's what people come to me for when they listen to the Pat Mayo experience. If I do other shows, they can be a bit more focused, segmented, regimented. Maybe include like listener questions and interactivity, that kind of thing. But that's going to take a lot more production. So if I have to allocate more time in preparation and production for those sorts of shows, I probably have to scale back on the production aspect, at least, of the Pat Mayo experience. And where more people listen to the audio version anyway, I think it works really well as an audio podcast. There's always the thing is we could double down on the Pat Mayo experience too and make it 2 hours per day, every day, and bring Jeff in twice a week, bring Tim in twice a week, bring Cam in twice a week, go out and try to find 2 or 3 more regulars to have as a part of a rotation. The issue is I've had a lot of success with single focus type shows. So this one is, waiver wire, injuries, and I added this on to the back end of it. But like, the golf show, we just talk about golf. The Spread Picks NFL show, yes, we do a Cuss Corner, but we talk about the NFL. DraftKings football, we talk about DraftKings football. DraftKings PGA, we talk about DraftKings PGA. On a 2-hour show that would be more like a radio show, I'd probably have to talk about baseball and bring in like a baseball guy. What are the plays of the day? I don't know if I want to do that. I don't think that's necessarily for me. I want to hear from you guys on this one of where you would like to see the Pat Mayo experience go. Most of the time people have just literally the shittiest suggestions in the world, but every now and again, there are some good ones in there. And just, if people are still listening to this part of the show, real fans, presumably, are hearing me talk about it. So I don't know. Like, people always think that there's this big grand vision and this big plan. Like, there is a plan, but it's more Mayo Media Network business related, like creating these new shows, bringing in new sponsors, giving a platform to more people. Like, I talked to someone today about the next baseball season, and they made a really good pitch to me about why they should be doing videos. They're really good on camera. They have really cool tools that I think are going to be really beneficial. I want the other shows on the network to have sort of a similar vibe to mine. I want them to be more profitable for the people with good advice, but I don't want them to be a slog at the same time either. And we've thrown a lot of shit against the wall over the past year, and that was part of the process, to see what works, to see what doesn't work. And it really turns out that the shows that do the best are the shows that are not necessarily the most like mine, but on the same vibration of mine. Ones that are like the Dogger Pass podcast, Cody and Paul's UFC show, does really well. Why? Because, I mean, I went to college with Cody and Paul. They are friends, and that really translates through the camera. Like, you know, Jeff and I are friends. Tim and I are friends. Meanie and I are friends. Cam and I are friends. I've known Pizzola long enough that we can talk. I mean, we don't like hang out a ton or anything like that, but, you know, we're friends. And I think that really translates through. And I don't know if that's necessarily what people like about my show in particular, or that's just what they like about podcasts. I happen to think that's more of a macro view of that's what people like about podcasts. You can get enough quick shows of people reading off spreadsheets. And I mean, half these podcasts could just be articles, to tell you the truth. And I think when you have people tuning into a podcast, the reason that they're there is for the entertainment, to help kill time. And maybe I'm way off on that. I don't know. I've been doing this for this is the 11th year of the Pat Mayo Experience, formally. I mean, it was the Pat Mayo Experience, and it was the Pat Mayo Hour, then it was the Pat Mayo Experience again. And I don't know, I want bigger and better things. I want to grow the audience. So maybe I need to be a guest on more people's podcasts going forward to see if I can break into that larger scale. I've been having meetings about that recently too, but there's so much more to producing this podcast because it's a full-time job than really tracking out where it goes forward, because you have to talk to the sponsors. You have to make sure that you have enough sponsorship to make this viable going forward. So you're not dumping in your personal savings and everything. So that's why when you hear a product that you like on the ad reads, please go buy it if it's something that interests you and you have the means to go do it. Subscribe to runthesims.com/Mayo. Prize Picks. If you're going to be like betting online anyway, go to Prize Picks. Use code MMN. That helps us out so well, and then we can sell off that as at the same time to new people that come in, and then we can make. And one thing that we never want to do here is charge people for the video or audio content. I've been very steadfast about that because I think it's hard to really grow your brand when you put stuff behind a paywall, but we'll have free shows that push to paywall products like Run the Sims, like Fantasy National. I think that's the best way to go about it as a business plan. But I don't know. Anyway, I know that was just a whole lot of like verbal diarrhea going on about nothing, but I give thought about the future of how it goes, but then, I mean, I'm going to end up doing, I think, 347 shows this year. When you're doing 6 shows a week or 7 shows a week or 5.5 shows a week, it doesn't give you a whole lot of time to plan. Like, you get into a routine, like this is football season, this is golf season, this is what I do in the interim to do filler shows. And maybe I can see the download numbers when I'm not talking about golf and when I'm not talking about football. I mean, the Davis shows actually do okay. Maybe that's something I can do in golf season. Do golf, football, specialty show about something. Like Cuss Corner does really well, but I think it would be less effective if we did a full Cuss Corner every single week. But maybe there's a supplement type show, like a specialty show, like a rotational Thursday or Friday show in non-football season that we can start to include that, like, once every 3 weeks it's Cuss Corner, or once a month it's Cuss Corner. After the week of that, it's some other sort of variety show that we do that's just, sort of a good hang and a good listen to. But we need people to support that at the same time. Like, when you see shows that, you don't even necessarily want to listen to, download them anyway. You don't need to listen to them. I would prefer that you do, but give them a chance. That kind of thing. That's how you sustain the ecosystem of, the podcast world. It's, you're offering a free product, you need to make your money elsewhere, but when you're competing against, literally millions of other people who are also offering free products, you need to keep that standard high, and we want to be held accountable to that at Mayo Media Network, that we're providing the best product for the means that we can do. Like, we're not going to be ESPN. We can't pay people $100K a year to do a podcast for 20 minutes a day. That's just unsustainable. We will be out of business within 2 weeks. So we need to find a way to make it good for the hosts, that they can leverage this platform into something that can make them a ton of money while we pay them at the same time. And we need the support of the people like you out there to do that. So again, that was me rambling on. Thank you all for staying along this long. Thanks for supporting Mayo Media Network. Subscribe if you haven't, by the way. Sub to Mayo Media Network. Smash the like. Join the Listeners League and everything like that. I hope everyone has a good week. I know the holidays are coming. Those can be tough on people. So if you ever need to email in, you can use that advice email as well. We can have a back and forth about anything if you need anyone to talk to. I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!